Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by Mike Smith, award-winning director Brian Redondo, and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 67, and we debate the hot and the not of Moon Knight Season 1. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
What up, gentlemen? We got our full complement of hosts today. Mike decided to grace us with his presence. Thank you, your grace.
You can't make that joke in two consecutive episodes.
Yes, we
Thank
can.
you for coming.
Yeah,
Appreciate
let
it.
me pull the
We're
curtain
so
back.
happy.
I've just been
glad.
sitting here for
The
the
Kyrie-
past hour and a half.
The Kyrie
I'm
Irving.
here, and I'm gonna get double
He's
jeopardy
gonna
here.
save
when
our
I've been
season.
here.
Well, you missed
It's
two-
like
you
it's
missed
like
two
going to a
episodes.
kid
You missed two
in
episodes.
class 20 minutes in and being like, "Thanks for joining us." It's like,
Hey, for all they know, this is the start of a new episode, and you decided to, make time in your busy schedule.
And they
for it.
asked
No,
me, where
I've
Mike
been- I've
at?
been
We ain't
sitting-
seen Mike.
oh
We
my
miss Money
God.
Mike.
Unbelievable.
Let's get it,
I'm
Wes.
back.
This episode is going to be a quick, short recap of the Moon Knight. What do we call it? Miniseries?
Can we call it? Can we call it midnight?
Midnight?
Stop.
Midnight
Stop just
Moon
forcing
Knight.
mid into puns. You just learned that damn word and now you just want to use it for everything.
Yeah, Mid Smith.
All right.
Stop gentrifying slang.
I
We've
didn't
reached-
just learn it. I only knew it in the context of other things.
What,
Mid-guard.
bad weed?
Yeah, well, medium. Anyway, go ahead, Wesley.
We reached the conclusion of the Mark Steven / maybe there's a Jake Lockley in there saga. Let's just start with the part about being confidently wrong on a scale of 1 to 5 with no decimals whatsoever. You got to choose a hard number. How would you rate the show overall? I'm going with a 2. It's on the lower end. I thought it was
Wow.
inventive. I did enjoy some of the mystery solving. I was really pretty confused by the psychological hospital stuff and how that came into play and whether it was real or not real or who Ethan Hawke really was. But in the end, I felt
That's
like it
the
was
whole
just
point.
fine, but not great. The show felt way more focused on unveiling like the story and the next twist rather than building any characters that we wanted to invest in. Steven's all right as a character, I guess. Like, I'd kind of want to see him a little bit more, but he's fine. I don't care to see any more about Mark. Layla was fine, but she didn't get enough screen time. I felt like I wanted something more. I didn't really care for like the hippopotamus god. Like, she's fine. I felt like the whole thing was fine. It's kind of a 2. Yeah, I'm not gonna go back and rewatch it. So that's how I felt. Savon, where you at?
I am going to, first of all, disregard you saying I can't use decimals. Sorry, bro. I can't be censored.
Commit.
I'm going to commit to a 3.3 because a 3
That's
or
not a
4.
commitment.
It's
Well,
commitment.
what's a 3.2 then? You got to know what the difference between a 3.2 and a 3.3 is then.
I do know what it is.
Savon knows.
I know the difference. I thought about it. You think
This
I just...
man
This is a
plays
short
Dungeons and
episode. This
Dragons.
is a short episode,
Yeah,
guys.
gee, I'm trying. He's not letting me live.
Why 3.3? Let's go.
Yeah, 3.3. So I thought that the characters and Moon Knight specifically, with all his personalities, was a high point of the show. It was extremely fun to watch. Oscar Isaac is a sensational actor, and it really helped carry this show. That was a big question we had early on. My biggest issue with the show is probably just some of the pacing, and to your point, some of just like the pacing and character introductions were a little all over the place. But I think they have a great foundation for an awesome character. I think despite the plot stuff maybe being iffy, everything involving Moon Knight and his just story and personalities and peeling back the layers, I was genuinely enthralled. So it kind of balances out to where the character basically watching Moon Knight just be a dope character really just elevated the show for me, despite other parts that were not as great. And Khonshu, I was iffy about Khonshu. He ended up becoming a very high point of the show for me, and I want to see a lot more of him. So I had fun watching it.
Brian.
I also don't follow directions. So 3.5, actually.
My host powers are diminished, Mike. No one listens to me.
That's just that's a bad system of rating.
You are restricting it quite heavily.
Uh-huh. That was on purpose. I wanted you to make a decision whether it was a 3 or a 4 or a 2.
What?
That really reads for
Not
you,
enough gradients,
you know?
man.
It's like
This
Vintage
is called
Wes.
Confidently Wrong. Not
Wes might as well ask
confidently...
0 or 1.
From a 0 to a 1,
on.
how you doing
All right,
today?
0 or 1. I'm going 0.
I go with 1.
Okay.
So this show is like pretty bonkers. Like
It was bonkers.
It's all
Facts.
over the place. It's weird. It's kind of wacky. It's totally off. But I'm very pleased that Marvel took it in this direction, or that Marvel allowed the creators of this show to take it in the directions that it did. It always left me surprised and curious where the hell it was going to go next. And because Oscar Isaac at the center of this, and his characters, Mark and Steven and Jake, is it Jake or Jack?
Jake.
So all those characters individually and collectively as a group through Oscar Isaac, I think are it's just fascinating. It's like, what's gonna happen? Like, where are they gonna go with this? Like, oh, they went there. Oh, that's weird. Like, where are they gonna go next? Oh, that I was not expecting a kaiju battle. Like, this show is kind of bananas. But I'm glad it exists, and I'm curious where it's gonna go next.
What would have made it go to a 4 for you?
Coherence? I don't know.
All right.
They need like 2 more episodes.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
it also felt
I did
rushed.
think the
Yeah.
director made really cool choices, and the editor, like the way that they would black out and it would kind of be like, and you'd like
Loved
see the
it.
jump cut. I thought that was really cool. I've never seen something like that before. So great creative team, and they enabled them to do that. I agree with that. Mike.
We talked in our last episode about how the character of Doctor Strange suffered to advance plot
That was
points
one of the
that we
episodes you
wanted.
were in, Mike, or one of the ones where you
Yeah,
weren't?
I think I was there. I've been sitting in this chair, so I assume so. This did the same thing. It sacrificed developing the character for a larger plot. The only difference is we didn't need the plot in that. Like, not everything needs to be end of the world stakes. I think that's something Alan says a lot. I don't know why they forced that on this in a show with 6 episodes when the character was so dope. I was hype on the show in the first 2 episodes because the character was absolutely intriguing. I think is the word Brian said. It was just like so interesting to see what was going to happen. The way they did the cuts and didn't show you the action was so cool, and then it just pivoted to telling just kind of a generic Marvel action story with the big fight set pieces, and some of them were cool again when they leaned into the kind of his as a character. Like, I thought the therapist stuff was awesome and creative and almost like a genre thing, like, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest-ish. But then it's just like, why do we need world-ending stakes with all this other stuff going on? Like that episode, like they even had like a Mandalorian-esque like quest of the week episode. And I remember like when they had to go to the thing to get the thing, so like it changed the thing. And I was like, why is this in here? Like I remember watching even confused watching the recap. And I was just like, why are you forcing this larger story and taking our attention away from a character who you built such a cool foundation on in 2 really awesome episodes, and then just absolutely bail on it? Like, I feel like the first couple episodes of this were some of the best Disney Plus TV shows, and I was finally like, cool, they're actually telling a character story rather than just another generic Save the World story. And then, sadly, it kind of pivoted.
It's
Also-
probably too late, but obviously we're doing spoilers in this show. So
Oh.
sorry, friends.
Does it matter? Like,
I
who
don't know.
cares about the spoilers in this? Like, it's
People.
whatever. It's
I mean, kind of.
But-
Lots of people.
There were a lot of reveals that were happening throughout. So anyway,
I didn't
it doesn't
care
matter.
about.
It's too
I
late. We
didn't
spoiled
care
it all.
about that other superhero at the end. It's like,
Other
how are
people
you
care.
really introducing
Well,
another
now we can
one
spoil it. We told them. We
when
spoiled
we
it.
haven't even really gotten acclimated to this?
Yeah.
I think Moon Knight has great potential. I'm hoping down the line they'll be able to tell an actual story about the character rather than telling a story where the character happens to be in it.
Well, that's where one
again,
of those episodes really shined, was when we find out how Steven was created. Was that episode
that
5?
moment is awesome. All
Yeah.
that is so cool. When it's about Moon Knight, it's cool. I don't care about Ethan Hawke. Like, I maybe that was like them a vehicle to kind of loop in the Egyptian stuff, which was also really cool. Love that.
Yeah, I dig
but
that.
just
I wasn't
I
sure
just
if I was
don't
gonna
care.
like it, but I liked it.
And it's also, we talked about villains. I don't care about this villain at all. Like, Ethan Hawke is a great actor and he played it really well and it was really spooky, but it's like, I just want to understand this character and his actions and his agency, and not just him being on this journey.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest issue these shows have, though, is just they, for some of the more experimental ones, you don't know if you're going to get a season 2, so you kind of have to. I don't know. That kind of stuff just clearly impacts what they do
Disney.
plot-wise.
They can if they want. Like, are they going to be out here canceling shows?
It's unclear if this is going to have a season 2 or where Moon Knight is going to appear after this. None of that has been.
I think they said it's not explicitly connected to the rest of the MCU.
I mean, it doesn't have to be. His whole universe is so self-contained that you can tell his own story. That's how it is in comics, too.
It was like the Batman, this most recent one. It starts off telling a story about this character, and it connects to one other singular character, and then boom, third act, it expands into the city's underwater. It was just like, God f***ing damn it. Sorry, BK.
No, you're not.
Like, just tell me, just make a movie about a thing instead of like
I feel like
making a movie about a thing. And
we need some exemplars because maybe this just isn't. Maybe this is. Does this
No
feel
Way Home. It was a movie about Spider-Man, and then the multiverse is just some shit that happened because he was an idiot. We continue to see him grow out of being an idiot and try and just wrap that up, and he does. The multiverse is just something to tell the story.
Didn't feel like a big, save the world, everything about to pop off type thing.
It kind of did.
It kind of did.
But no one was trying to destroy. No one was trying to destroy the world. Right?
Yeah,
the villains were just
like
after him.
Villain. We didn't. Yeah, it was just like his world, this tight net of what was happening. Yeah, it kind of did get to the end, but it doesn't jump immediately to like, oh well, here I go. I have to go save the world. It's just like, oh shit, like I'm going through this crisis, and I messed up my friends' college careers, and might have broken the multiverse, but mostly
also
I'm trying to figure out.
So the biggest knock on like the original Netflix Marvel shows was that they had twice as many episodes as they really needed. Like Jessica Jones and Luke Cage just kept going on and on and on. And it's like, oh my God, like, can we stop? Can we just shrink this down to what the story needs? I think that actually the opposite is true for the Disney Marvel shows where they're packing way too much stuff. They're trying to do big blockbuster movie scope events. Cram it into 30 to hour-long episodes. There are only 6 episodes running, and so
Brian can never be satisfied. It's too long. It's too short.
But the ceiling.
Think about this though. Like when you're dealing with a character like Moon Knight, who nobody really knows. A lot of us don't know it. Even people that read comic books, it's not the most popular comic book out there. So you're establishing dissociative identity disorder. So multiple characters within the same character. We also don't know the lore of this, of the Egyptian mythos that Moon Knight exists in. And then you got like this other villain who has his own agenda, and then they throw in Layla at the end, who's a superhero, all in 6 episodes. It's too much. It's too much.
30 minutes of Kingpin getting dressed in Daredevil. It was that level of exposition, and it pays off because, like, in those 30 minutes, like, you just you get a sense of how intense of a person he is. The ceiling, I think a lot of those shows were too long, but I think the seasons that did take advantage of having that time, the ceiling of the Netflix shows is so much higher than the ceiling of the Disney Plus shows. Like, the best season of Daredevil is just arguably 3 or 1.
No, it's season 2, you clown.
No, because they did they slammed in the stupid.
That's his most iconic. That's his most iconic villain.
I know, but we're not talking about the comics. We're talking about the TV show. We can't. I mean, we're gonna just keep circling on that cord. You can flip me off with that lanky ass finger if you want. But they ham-fisted in the ninja stuff. The first half of season 2 is excellent because it's about him and the Punisher, and it's not about some larger plot. It's about these two characters, different ideologies smashing into each other, and it's a beautifully told story.
Amen.
And then they just slam into the ninja stuff so they can loop it into that terrible Defender show. Yeah. It's just true, Savon.
The Defender show wasn't good, but the hand storyline in Daredevil, I'm not going to disparage that because it was sensational.
The Daredevil absolutely thrives on exactly what I'm talking about, and it's what Disney Plus episodes can't do. Like Brian was saying, in such a short amount of time, they need the time to actually flesh out the characters, and then God forbid the actual story is just about those characters and what their interaction means, rather than them having to play off of some larger event that isn't an actual thing that we know anything about. It's just something they're saying is happening. It's just you need to let these characters that are great and were great in the comic books get the space they had to develop in the comic books, but they don't get that in this stuff, and then we're supposed to just buy in. So it's different for you because, again, you've done the homework with understanding these characters, but so much of this stuff I'm just like, what is happening right now? I don't understand who I'm actually looking at.
Or I don't care who I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Confidently curmudgeons.
All right, Jake Lockley finally makes an actual
They get me
appearance.
every time.
Shows up at the end of the last episode and assumably shoots Ethan Hawke in the face. I forget his name. Harrow in the face. Even though they make it clear that he's been there all along. We decided that he's the most brutal character, like the ice cream truck scene where everybody is just annihilated. That must have been Jake on the top of that rooftop where there's like 6 guys lying on the floor, and when they were trying to take the scarab from him, and there was like 8 guys lying on the floor. That all must have been Jake Lockley, not Mark. So he finally comes in. He's a little bit different, I think, than he's in the characters. I've heard that he was more of like a Scottish cab driver or something like that. He has
like a Chicago accent in the show.
Yeah, but now he has
Spanish,
some kind of New York or Chicago accent.
Very different, by the way, Wes.
Yeah,
West Coaster.
What, Chicago and New York?
Yeah, those places are nowhere near each other.
Those are definitely not very different.
You drink pop in Chicago.
Yeah,
everything
honestly.
East of LA is New York.
Yeah, like I'm a hop and a skip from Chicago, but New York, that's far.
I feel like it's the Irish influence though on both cities that ends up like
What?
pinching their
What are you talking
their accents.
about?
Oh my God.
Get this
All
man.
Okay, move on.
Yep, pivot.
Keep it going.
So I think what I want to know is like, is this Jake Lockley going to show up in future stuff? Where could he fit in? Where can Moon Knight fit in? And would you be into a season 2 of Moon Knight, or would you rather just have it end where it is, or would you rather have him pop up in somebody else's movie or show? Mike, where are you on this? Since you kind of thought it was like, it's fine.
That should have been the focus of the show. Is him coming to terms with his violent past, and that could have been a great thing to talk about relevant to the trauma he's had with his mom, specifically how that led to Steven and coming to terms with that. And then I think Jake could have been a really cool part of that is you come to terms with what you think you know are your issues, and then you have more that appear. And I think that could have been cool.
Maybe
I loved all that.
Maybe that's season 2 then.
I hope so, and I keep saying I was gonna say before we moved on, I was like, maybe I'm just gonna start only watching the first 2 episodes of all these series, because that's when they actually talk about the characters before moving on. So I don't know. I mean, Brian said a few times in the notes here, like, I hope it doesn't connect to the MCU, and maybe that's kind of where it is just focus on the actual character and tell a more grounded story. Grounded as far as you can with magic, you know what I mean, but in terms of what's happening.
Not very grounded. That was actually one of the worst parts to me was the kaiju fight where Amit and Khonshu are as big as the pyramids or bigger than the pyramids and just fighting, but no one can see them, and there was no actual reason for that to be, and they weren't. It didn't serve any purpose. We didn't learn more about the characters through that fight.
Why they became Godzilla and King Kong all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
Like,
I think
why-
Amit was absorbing souls and Khonshu was under the full moon. Now, did it have to be them giants fighting? Maybe not, but I think that's their. That's why. When I watched the show, that's what I saw. I'm saying we watched the absorb souls. When we watched Khonshu, like, hey, yo, it's a full moon. We up.
But
Turn
Amit
up.
absorbed like 10 souls, and then all of a sudden was as big as
Was more
bigger
than
than
10 souls
the
player.
pyramids.
I would much rather see Mr. Knight and Moon Knight flip back and forth and just brawl with 100 henchmen in a back alley. That would be a much
Agreed.
better fight scene.
Agreed.
Yeah.
They didn't need to be giant. I like them fighting inside the building. I actually enjoyed that more than them being giant. Like, I like them fighting, just they didn't have to go, the kaiju.
And no one could see them, right? Isn't that the deal? Like, no one
but
can
they
see them.
established. But they established that before too. Of like, no,
Loses
we're
the
not
impact. Nobody can see it.
I will say though that I'm glad, that was like sort of the biggest idea where they went with the show. They didn't be like, okay, we got these 2 kaijus, so now we got to bring in some Avengers or something like that. None of that happened in the show. They resisted the urge to tie in the rest of the MCU. And I read that there were a couple possibilities to do it. They thought about bringing Kit Harington and bringing the Black Knight in this. Thank God they didn't. And we were able to just focus on the world of Moon Knight. And so the Jake Longley scene is also another example of that, where usually the end credits scene, like, oh no, here comes Julia Louis-Dreyfus or something. Thank God. Instead, we just got Spanish-speaking Oscar Isaac, which adds another layer of complexity to his entire story. Like, okay, so Jack Longley's the one who is Jake Longley's the one who's, really the truly murderous one of the personality. Where does he originate? And what is his relationship with Khonshu? Like, why is Khonshu still in the picture and playing puppet master to this poor guy that has dissociative identities, right? And so that's, to Mike's point, that's an idea that I would love if they explored more. What does it mean to have this hyper violence exist within himself, and how is he negotiating with it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that's ripe for a season 2. And I hope it's not something that they just try to shoehorn into a movie where somebody else's movie where they're trying to figure out this other character all of a sudden. Like, I hope that does not happen at all.
It's like, it's not actual different personalities, it's just the multiverse.
Oh God. He's dream walking into Mark Spector. Like, oh Lord.
Oh boy.
Savon, where are you hoping they go?
This personality was one of the high points of this series for me, because I think that actually gives it some replay value. I think, the journey of just him having all these just issues, these mental health issues, makes a lot of scenes fun to watch in hindsight as you've gotten to get more reveals. So just him, like I said, we talked about it before, just all the violent scenes of like, oh crap, that we thought that was Mark, that was actually Jake, adds a lot of depth and intrigue, especially to a character who we already see has a broken mind and we think is resolving it. And it's like, oof, but this is not close to over. But I think it's exciting because the relationship between now Mark and Steven, who've resolved their kind of like conflict with one another, feel like they've resolved things with Khonshu, but now that there's a whole nother personality in the background, I think you'll get some, if there's another season, you'll get some high quality content. Like, I think Moon Knight can be a show where season 1 is them getting their footing and season 2 is them hitting the ground running now that they know what works, what people like. And if you lean more into just the issues of Jake and his murderous personality and then how they're trying to balance that out and then Khonshu's just machinations and manipulations, you can not have a bigger conflict at all and get some top tier television. So like, I think Moon Knight could be in that like Daredevil area of gritty, dark, really good street level ish Marvel stuff, which is where he exists. But I'm really excited. Like, just Jake's hyper violence and relationship with Khonshu, I think alone is the basis for an amazing season. So I want more. And again, right. Oscar Isaac is amazing. His acting is so amazing that I know he'll execute it well.
Yeah. He was really not into doing this apparently because of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And also X-Men.
Oh yeah, he was Apocalypse.
Yeah,
he's Apocalypse.
Do you know who convinced him to play to do this? His good buddy Pedro Pascal. They're like tight homies, and he was like, "No." And what do you mean? They've both been. I don't know.
We've talked about them on this pod before about how they're just in everything.
In everything, yeah, and it's also doubly
Power
funny
couple.
that they're like really tight. But
they're real Illuminati.
But he was excellent, and I was skeptical, so highly agree there.
So I guess that takes us to some final thoughts. Whether we kind of already talked about whether you want to see a season 2. I actually went into this conversation a little bit tired of the MCU shows. I feel like I would be better off actually in terms of my interest and investment if I only watch the movies kind of moving forward. There just doesn't seem to be, for me personally, it hasn't been enough upside in these shows to be like, yeah, man, I'm really into it. I think there were several times this series where I didn't watch Moon Knight until Friday or Saturday. And part of it is just my life is kind of busy right now, but also it didn't seem like I had to see it on Wednesday as soon as it came out. So I think that to me says a little bit about my interest right now in MCU content. But based on what Savon said, I'm also like, I could see it being a really cool season 2 and the tension between the 3 different personalities and them trying to control Jake and Jake being like, nah, bro, like I'm the baddest mofo in here. And like, you're not going to figure out a way to keep me down, or Khonshu's going to find a way to make Jake in charge more, and it's going to be the other two having to figure out a way to get Jake on board with like what they're actually okay with. So I do like, Savon, you kind of convinced me like maybe there's a possibility here of a good season 2. That being said,
there's more story there.
Like, there's a lot of mid shows that's not Marvel shows too. That's just like,
yeah, for sure.
This has the same issues as this, but it's less, at least for me, less front value entertaining.
Yeah, I'm not mad I watched it. I think I'm getting quite a bit of fatigue from watching the shows, and there hasn't been the high ceiling. And for me, since Loki, that was the one I enjoyed the most, and that was over a year ago now at this point. So, we keep watching these shows hoping for some really great stuff, and like they just haven't even gotten to either near the level of like Spider-Man No Way Home or Thor Ragnarok. Like they just aren't on that level, and maybe that's a wrong expectation because it's a TV show. But it's only so much time you got in your day. You got to spend it where you want to, and I'm starting to think that these shows for me are not where I'm really excited to spend my time, even though there's some good stuff that comes out of them.
Y'all really like that Loki show. That's the wildest thing to me.
I really
love that
like
Loki
Loki.
show.
It's excellent.
That show
it's just so
gets
good.
worse for me by the month. Like every time we talk about it and I think
It's
back, I'm like,
expiring
it
in
gets
your
worse.
fridge.
It actually gets worse. I'm like, no, maybe it'll age like wine. I'm like, nah.
No.
Every time I think back, I'm like, ugh.
But I think the only two that actually needed to be shows were WandaVision and Loki. Everything else just felt like a longer movie with breaks in the middle. But like I feel like especially starting with WandaVision, where they did it like episodes, it like lent itself to being a TV show. And I think we're starting to get fatigued because it's just a movie that's been kind of dragged out to be longer.
I think I'm getting fatigued by Marvel's in-house style, which is, you know, shoot everything in a studio, really bright lighting, have some like throwaway quips, one-liners and whatever, and then just keep churning along to make everything connected to the greater universe. But
which is
for those reasons, that's actually why I'm glad Moon Knight exists, because it is just something different that I don't think we would have gotten a chance to see, or any creators would have been able to experiment with, you know, just a couple years ago. But, you know, here we are with, you know, this bonkers of a character and entirely new mythos. And they really tried a lot of different things in this show. You know, episode 5 or 4 or 5 is a real standout. Maybe both of them, actually.
The whole mental health reveal thing was sick.
You know, jumping into the psych ward and all of a sudden Harrow is his therapist and you're just not entirely sure what is real, having unreliable narrators or perspectives in this. But also just passing through the afterlife in ancient Egyptian mythology. Like all of that is just, you know, kind of wild. And I'm glad that they were willing to take big swings with this show. Did it work all the time? No, definitely not. But they tried it. And for that, I applaud their show. And, you know, I'm kind of curious, like what can become of it from there? Because it's so different from the rest of the MCU.
Marvel's in a challenging spot where the formula is what allowed them to build this unprecedented universe in the first place. And had they not done it, we wouldn't even have the groundwork for all of this. But the flip side, though, is that it's harder to be, you know, you have just two sides that are competing kind of hard, and it's just hard because one can't exist without the other. Without the formula, you don't have the investment and groundwork for these creative shows, but the creative shows still can be held back by the formula that allowed them to exist in the first place. It's not an easy place to be in. I think that's why I give Marvel a little bit of grace. But to Brian's point, that's why I'm very complimentary of them when they do something that departs, even if there are elements of the formula, because it's hard.
You know, it had grown from like the first Iron Man movie to the end of that what do they call it, era. They'd gotten so much better, not just in terms of the story, obviously, because they weren't having to like start all these new characters, and in terms of the actual, I think, the quality of the movies they were making. And I think we thought they were going to be able to keep all that up without realizing that like they're kind of having to start anew. So I think there's still some of the quality there we've seen, but I do think that we're starting from scratch. So I do wonder if we're kind of in that position and we thought they were going to be able to keep all that momentum. But I guess like if you're leading up to, you know, 10 years of movies to an event, it's kind of hard to ride that high.
Mm-hmm. It's just, Marvel just needs to, what's the word?
I hope we just get the Thor Ragnarok treatment on a lot of these characters. Not just a great movie, but like really just actually thinking about the character and telling those stories rather than just
Oh, that's interesting.
end of days every time.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought you meant in terms of letting them have their own style. Like, I've been very vocal about not liking Ragnarok's aesthetic, but I respect it because it's its own. Like, I don't like the 80s glam rock look at all. It takes me out of it personally, but I'm glad they do it because at least it's showing creative liberty and giving it its own tone and vibe. But again, it takes years to build up to that. But I think, for all the criticisms we have about Marvel and Disney, I think they do learn from their mistakes. I think when a movie doesn't do something right or well, they try to figure out how they can address it in later stuff. I think they're going through the growing pains of their shows and figuring out what works, what doesn't. And so we're going to have some really good shows like WandaVision and some really, divisive mid shows like, Winter Soldier or Loki. So... let's just give it some time. Yeah, I threw that in there.
I'm glad you at least threw Winter Soldier in there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's
all. Oh, yeah, but I know that's fan service, though. I know I'm at with it.
Yeah, I mean, what we're getting at, and I think what a lot of people are probably getting at, is something I mentioned last show, which is that these movies have to have the soul, and the directors and the writers have to really believe in this project and have a vision for it before they start, and Marvel has to let them do it. And in the projects where we've seen that come out the most, like Thor Ragnarok, I think is a great example. It's been 100% successful, and in the shows where it really seems like they were kind of trying to play it safe or move things along or just be really where it just didn't seem like they took the same care to really like commit to it. We're getting movies that are good but not great, not fantastic. And I mean, that's always going to be the case, right? No matter what kind of movie you're making, you really want to have directors and writers be in place and actors be in place who are 100% throwing themselves into this thing, and they're living and dying by like every moment of that film.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Batman and Peacemaker,
right?
We're in 2022. We expect more now.
Yep. Yeah. But to that point though, you can't. I don't think you can come out the gates with a lot of the ambitious stuff. You got to build up to it. It doesn't. That's the challenge. If you lead with with some of the newer characters, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Like, you can't lead Thor Ragnarok as the first Thor movie. People would clown that movie if you led with that.
I don't know if they would.
If you led with a Thor movie about an Asgardian god, but it has like a rock vibe, people will say, "What the hell is this?"
I think it works because the whole movie is cohesive. That's why I think it works. I think that's why Batman
don't think you
works.
could do that from a character perspective, but I think you could. It's just a quality movie.
I mean, it's the same way we said, like, you couldn't put out a Doctor Strange movie before Iron Man came out. Like, I think that's the point I'm making of these. Like, when I want them to do their ambitious stuff, but you can't lead with that. You can't. Most projects, they start off with something tame and then it gets wilder and builds up because now you've got the investment to do bigger scale or more ambitious stuff. But people aren't going to see a Thor Ragnarok type movie without at least some background of the character set up, not just a James Gunn movie with, glam rock and AC/DC playing. Like, that's not how you get people. You got to lure people in before you put that on them. And, Marvel has to figure out how they're going to
I think I disagree with that. I think if you make a good movie where there's a clear commitment to a vision and the movie is fun and good or whatever you're trying to go for, people are into it. Like, Get Out wasn't Get Out, right? Wasn't a movie that we had seen before, and people loved that movie. It was committed to what it was. The Korean movie, what was it called? Paranoia?
Parasite
was like the same way, right? Squid Game was the same way. As soon as you make something that is committed to the idea, people are going to latch on to that. I don't think that's a problem for people to be like, oh, well, it didn't come first. Like, that's people go to see something that's good.
No, I think you have to. I think more ambitious concepts require a building up, leading up to it. But that's just a taste thing.
Fair enough.
Here we are back to shilling for the mouse.
I'm not shilling for the mouse.
We'll be back with Obi-Wan in a couple weeks. So
y'all already know I'm low on Obi-Wan.
You're low on Obi-Wan?
I've been low. I was dumping on that when we talked about. I didn't even watch the trailer. I don't want to see this.
No, this could be it. This could be it.
Y'all gonna be so disappointed. First of all, y'all are incapable of liking things. Y'all expect Obi-Wan to come out there and be Jesus Christ, probably.
He is Jesus.
All right, let's end it there, friends. Hit us up on our socials at confidently_pod. It's been lovely. We'll see you in hopefully a week, maybe 2. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Totals.
Bye.